Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Nen Show Podcast. This is Craftsdwarf, your host, here with Mathwiz. Say hello, Mathwiz.
But what is the Trigun, though?
That's a good fucking question. Yes, our main character, Trigun, and his friend, Vash. I don't know. I was trying to book the edit. Yeah.
I've seen the anime for this, but not read the manga before, and, I had someone who hasn't read Trigun ask me, is there a Trigun or something like that, or, something along those lines, and I'm like, I don't know if there is a Trigun, or if that's... So, I could be forgetting, or maybe it just wasn't in the anime, or maybe it's just not there at all.
No, because I guess to go into our personal histories with Trigun, I haven't touched it before. I was aware of it because I remember when I got into anime, I did watch a bunch of Toonami shows like Big O and Cowboy Bebop, Outlaw Star, but I kind of never got around to Trigun. Not that I've had zero exposure with it, because I did read the first of the two US releases back at Anime Expo a few years ago. And I was just kind of like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. And I read it, and I was like, well, I kind of understand what's going on to a better degree now. But, I did, and I was able to finish it. But even finishing it was like, well, it got, the magazine it was in got fucking canned. So,
yeah.
I think, I still think it wasn't a bad idea to do the reading that way, just because it's like, we really get that awkwardness of just the, canceled, we haven't read a canceled manga yet. I think... Shaman King had some rough parts, but that was it. But we read the smoothed over version that wasn't we didn't read the original ending or anything with Shaman King. And I feel like every other manga we've read has had a, even Yu Yu Hakusho was ended on Togashi's terms, right? So we've never read a manga that got canceled, because I have been reading a bunch of them because I've been keeping up with Jump for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever a manga gets canceled, it's like, oh, okay. But now we get to get that feeling on the Nen Show of just like, shit. Of course, this is only the first of 3 episodes, because we'll be reading Maximum next. But so what's your history with Trigun?
So back in, I don't know, I think it was 2016 or somewhere around there. Before I started making YouTube videos, I watched the Trigun anime, and... what I didn't know at the time was just how much anime original content is in it. I remember really liking it, but then, so coming into the manga, I do have some experience with some of the material. At least I know pretty much everything that happened in this section, albeit some things are maybe a little out of order, or just sort of presented a little differently. But then when it comes to Maximum, I don't really know where the story goes from there.
Yeah, because you recommended it, and I had been thinking about it, but after I finished the manga, I did watch the Aesthetic Clinic video, where he talks about how Trigun works as an adaptation, and because it does restructure the material and adds a bunch of anime original content. To the point that only 35% of the anime is the manga. It nearly triples the material.
Yeah,
pretty much. And I gotta say, I watched that video and I just had this feeling of fuck, I wish I'd watched the anime, and I still can, luckily, because honestly, the manga didn't really do much for me at all. There was a couple points where I was like, oh, this element seems kind of interesting, but then it just ends, right? The saving grace being that this is probably the weakest single part of Trigun, because it does have a continuation, and it does have an adaptation that seems to add a lot. The way he talked about in the video, it's oh yeah, it has these first few episodes from Meryl's perspective, and giving you a sort of unfolding mystery with Vash, and a lens into the world as it is. And I was like, wow, caring about the world, that would be great.
Yeah.
Because just from the manga, I don't really have that. So we'll talk about it, but just yeah, this was honestly probably some of the roughest reading I've had to do for the Nen Show.
Oh, wow.
I don't know why, I was just not into it at all. It was only 3 volumes, but it was still just kind of just had to drag myself through it, because you already care about these characters, right?
Yeah,
that you're invested in what's going on, and I was like, oh, this part's kind of neat, I guess. And then the manga just continued, and then it ended, and I was like, okay, That was the thing I read. Like, I still, I don't know, I'm kind of interested in some of the things it's doing, but obviously, like, at this point in the reading, it didn't really get time to do a huge amount. And there were parts that I started getting interested, but they were towards the end, so it's like, oh, there's not that much left. I think the one moment that really, like, that was just, because I didn't know it was canceled before I went into it, unfortunately, but I kind of figured it out when, like, 5 chapters away from the end, they're like, hey, Vash, you gotta collect all these coins from all these, like, 12 guys, and, like, there's more guys than there are chapters left in the manga. Like, this isn't gonna work out. It is what it is. I'm open to liking Trigun more in the future, but right now I'm not quite there yet. But
one thing about Trigun Maximum that, like, when I was, like, looking stuff up while reading it was just, like, I always think of, because of the anime, I always think of Trigun as, like, this mid to late 90s, like, like an anime classic kind of deal. But when it's, like, majority of the story looks like it was published in the 2000s. Like, I didn't realize it was ongoing until, like, 2007, or at least that's what Mao said.
Okay. Well, I even thought that was funny because there's a pick, the pick you might do for the 2000s block, also, I don't know, I just remember seeing that it, like, because I was just thinking about, because Shaman King also, a lot of it published in the 2000s, even because it's a late 90s series. So, yeah, there's just that, well, because this one I picked because, like, I just have a completionist thing, and I have a bunch of manga that I started reading and never finished. Yeah. Many of those are just not fully translated. But Trigun was one where it's like I did start it, and I was like, it starts in a Shounen it started in a Shounen magazine, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, because I guess that's another thing that's new, is this is our first series on the Nen Show where it's, because one of the rules I came up with trying to decide what series would be Nen Show applicable was basically, it's fine for us to read a seinen, but only if it started in a Shounen magazine. Because I thought it would be really, like, dumb to just read JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and then we go, like, 5 volumes into Steel Bro, and it's like, oh, we can't read it anymore. It's a seinen manga. And it's like, it doesn't change meaningfully after that point. It just happens to switch magazines, right? Or same with Kinnikuman. And then you have series like Vinland Saga where, even though there are some level of tonal changes to a degree, like, it's very minor, relatively speaking, but it's like, again, it's just the idea of just only reading the shonen parts are just so silly to me that, like, that's an exception I had to make. And this is our first series where we actually get to read a seinen manga, technically, because that's just how it worked, where Trigun, changed magazines. So
that was one thing I was able to kind of feel more strongly, because, like, when I watched the anime in 2016, I hadn't seen a whole lot. We certainly hadn't started the podcast. I wasn't making anime videos yet. So, like, revisiting the material through this first chunk of the manga, I definitely feel the, like, kind of structure of a shonen magazine a little bit more, especially when it hits, like, the second volume, and it's like, here are these 12 assassins, and here's this big antagonist they're setting up and stuff like that. But yeah, I could definitely understand if, like, you're not already attached to the characters, if the manga didn't really, like, hook you in the same way, because I definitely felt like, at least reading the first volume, it definitely, to me, felt like something was missing, because I had that experience of going through the anime first, and it adds in more to the, it even just, like, details of the world are kind of completely restructured. If I remember correctly, I don't think the whole, like, sci-fi outer space aspect of the series, I'm pretty sure that's, like, a reveal in the anime that doesn't come up until several episodes in, and it kind of operates on this idea that it's, on, like, the Western aesthetics, and it being, out in, like, the desert, and, everybody's got guns, and, like, you got the showdowns and the standoffs and that stuff.
Yeah, that was my perception of it before I read the manga, but then I read it, and, like, in the first volume you have the fucking shit with the plant, and even the second chapter mentions, like, humanity fled to this planet. So it's like, there's just, they hit you with the sci-fi very soon, if it's not in the first chapter, which, skimming through, that one seems to be more of the shootout stuff. Maybe there was a line that I'm missing, but yeah, no, and because at least I will say I do, at least to a degree, like, Vash is probably, like, my favorite part, because he's a silly guy, and but the part that really made me go, like, oh, was when he, like, later on we see all of his scars and just how fucked up this guy's body is from all of his fights, and the way they frame it as, like, this is the result of you, like, your ideal with not killing people, and because he has to fight harder and to keep his opponent alive, even though he uses a gun, a tool of killing, and that's the sort of like pain he literally bears on his body for doing that. And that was where I just got and started like having some stronger feelings towards Vash as a character. And then the manga ended like 7 chapters later. It's like, okay, it's like that's gonna be like the punchline of everything I say. I feel just because it's like that's just how it's, and it's like it's really because like I will reading a bunch of canceled manga, like some of them I'm just like I wasn't caring for it anyway, and now it's over. Some of them will even drop before they end because I just wasn't into them at all. And then have been some where I've been reading it, and like I think probably one of the worst ones in recent memory was Tenmaku Cinema, which was done by the artist writer duo who also did Food Wars, and it was about high schoolers making films, and it was really cool. But I didn't see that it was ending because I don't follow any news accounts. So it's like, oh boy, they finished the first arc. And then they're like, the end. And I'm like, no, I like this manga. It was really cool and good. And I didn't smell the cancellation just from reading it. So I just had that disappointment. So I can see of course, it's a canceled manga and it really sucks because it does impact even that series that I liked. It's like, well, I still ultimately can't feel too highly on it just because it got ended early and, didn't really capitalize on everything it was doing. One exception probably being Time Paradox Ghost Rider, which was only 2 volumes, but even those 2 volumes are still like really interesting. So Trigun, sets up some neat stuff and then ends, and it's like, well, okay. But of course it's not over, but I don't know. It's just like, I don't want to be dishonest to my feelings on the series currently, because I don't, we do come at it from a different perspective here, where you watch the anime, you have your own perspectives on these characters, and it adds a bunch more anime original content. And I think especially just thinking about how this is actually kind of the inverse perspective, at least when we read it for Boruto, because obviously we both like Naruto, but I came out reading Boruto from having watched a bunch of the anime, and at the time you hadn't watched any of it, so there's that level of this is kind of like a clip show. There's something missing here in a sense, even though you hadn't watched the anime. Where I was like, it expands on it a lot, and now you have seen some of the anime, and you're like, Boruto anime good, So, I'm definitely interested in giving the anime a watch at some point, but I don't have enough. I don't think I'll get to it before we finish the Maximum. So
I know. Also, just like on the topic of Boruto, it just because like in the Cynic Clinic video, the title is about Trigun's 65% filler. That's why it's good, or something like that. And I just remember there being a Twitter post going around about the filler percentages in anime or something, and Boruto had a really high number, and I just quote tweeted it that's a good thing actually.
Exactly right. And I feel that's the thing, is because people think of filler as this negative thing, but thinking about Boruto and Trigun, even without having seen it, that's interesting to me, because it's not when such large stretches of the series are completely anime original. It's different from where it's One Piece or Bleach, where Bleach does have its anime original arcs and stuff, but it also they both kind of stretch out the material too, and that creates a different effect while watching it. And I'm watching the early stuff of One Piece right now, and it's already stretched out to a degree, but it's also good still. So I don't know. It's just there's definitely going to be cases where anime adaptations don't cut it, but I don't think. Anime original content is not the worst thing that you could do. I mean, you just watched an anime adaptation that you don't think was very good as an adaptation, it wasn't. I don't imagine there was a lot of anime original content, right? So
no. I don't want to get too deep into anime and manga adaptations, but just for me at this point, I think I want to see if I've read, whether I've read the manga or not. Honestly, I think I want to see the anime kind of bring its own energy to things, or its own sort of it being a faithful adaptation, I think is still important, but if there are things that can be additive content, things that can expand on, Trigun is a good example where at the time there had only been a few chapters of Maximum published, I think, and so it's well, we're gonna make this a 2-core anime series. There's not enough material for that. So I feel in a situation like that, I feel like it worked out.
Yeah. So anyway, we get our the first chapter is a big old shootout, kind of just establishing Vash and a bit of the world. I do like his line where he's like, you know, for the price of a bullet, I can get a bunch of food. Like, what, you know, he does his anti-violence, you know, and even just the way that it sets up this world of violence and murder, and him as the sort of antithesis to that, I just thought was neat.
Yeah, I know, the art style, I think, was also something that kind of took time to grow on me. Like, I thought the second volume, or at least, like, what I was reading, which is like a compilation of the 3 volumes into 2. And I thought that like which was like starting from chapter 12 or something, I think. I thought the second volume looked better than the first. I found like some of the action hard to follow. But I think that might also just kind of be a side effect of manga.
Maybe. I kind of find it hard to follow too. I was thinking like maybe because most of the manga I read, I feel like they use like physical combat, like weapons and martial arts and stuff. So maybe like guns just don't read as easily to me in manga format. I was wondering about that because I also found some of the manga hard to follow in the combat. As someone who has also read, I mean, you know, you just said, oh, maybe it's just me with manga, but it's like, well, I don't know, maybe because it's also just you know, I've read plenty of manga too, but I also don't. I don't remember any where I've like really liked the gun action, if that makes sense. And that maybe I just haven't read enough. Because I feel like most of what I've read involves more martial stuff. Yeah.
Oh, I think another thing that tripped me up is like the dialogue bubbles wouldn't always have like that little kind of line that shows who it's coming from. So I got, especially in like the first couple chapters, I was occasionally confused on who was talking.
Yeah, I think that happened to me once or twice too, because you do have, for sure. That's not unique to Trigun, but usually character voice or just context can help. But I don't know, maybe that was just an issue with the translation of not, or maybe it wasn't just like that moment of just like lacking. Because like I'm looking at some pages right now and you know, especially if you have multiple characters talking at the same time and none of them have like clear like this is who's talking, then you know I gotcha. But yeah, anyway, then we're introduced to Millie and Meryl, who Strife and Thompson were their names again, like sort of getting at like, well, because I don't know, even thinking back, I guess it's kind of interesting that like because like one thing that they don't really expand on because I feel especially some of the reels come very at the end, but like, you know, Vash is literally like part of the reason this world exists, right? Like him, Rem, and Knives, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I'm remembering. There's like okay. They basically created the world in a sense, but Vash but it's become a world of violence, I guess, and so I was just wondering about how like because Vash. What's Vash's role been the last 150 years? Because like we kind of only know how he fits into things very recently. I feel with him as a human disaster, basically. Mm-hmm. So there's just setting details I'm curious about. So so I'm just throwing that out there. Oh wait, and you mentioned the Western aesthetic, but I also want to point because it also feels like I'm with the Nebraska family. Like you have the really big guy. It just feels very like Fist of the North Star as well, which also sort of draw Mad Max, that sort of like there's like an apocalyptic feeling to it, even though it's if anything, well, I guess it is a post-apocalypse in the sense of like they abandoned Earth and went to another planet, but like this planet hasn't had an apocalypse, so to speak, but it is following up with Earth, so
no, I definitely see that.
But yeah,
one thing I think is also kind of interesting with the manga is like, there are definitely a lot of times where the character designs are simplified for like comedy, but like just looking at Vash's character design, and he's got like all the like buckles and stuff on like his pants and his like sleeves and stuff, just like a lot of little tiny details. It's interesting.
No, yeah, because it's even when he is like simplified, there's like I'm looking at this one panel at the end of like chapter 3 where Millie and Meryl shoot the Nebraska Family guy, and he's got big wide eyes, but every fucking one of his buttons not only has the button, but there's like the little like indentation on his coat where the button is, and it's just like all individually drawn, and it's like, eesh. So yeah, I gotcha. And yeah, he does have some really complex. I mean, in a way, the coat is the easy part, because I'm thinking of like, well, what's in his coat, right? Like it's all these scars and wounds, and his arms, which are covered in belts, and it's just like, geez, good luck drawing this, motherfuckers. Yeah.
I guess one thing that's also kind of interesting is that the first chapter doesn't really tell like most first chapters tell like a complete like single story, and then like the follow-up chapter, but this like sets up a conflict and just jumps into it. I don't know if that's kind of a difference with monthly manga or not.
That is a good question. Oh yeah, you're right, because it does. Yeah, I look back at the first chapter, and yeah, it does. Yeah, you're right. Because it ends with the the maid about to shoot Vash. So yeah.
And like I'm pretty sure the anime opens with like a little bit of the chapter 1 content, but also like some original stuff already.
No, I think that's what Cineclinic brought up in the video about.
And
how,
like
yes.
the pilot chapter gets adapted into it too fairly early on.
It sounds like they do some really neat things there.
Yeah, I think like overall, one thing I noticed with the manga is that like I didn't feel like Millie and Meryl left as much of an impression on me.
Like I can say that they don't particularly stand out to me. They're just there, I guess. So yeah, like
I do still like Meryl in the manga. I think but yeah, it's just I feel like they have a little more of a presence in the anime because there's extra material with them. And yeah, just like the whole thing with Vash the Stampede, like they don't initially know that the guy they're following is Vash in the anime.
Yes, he brought that up in the video, which adds. I like that because I like that trope. Because I think we brought up when talking about Princess. I brought it up when talking about Princess Tutu, where it's like I like when you have like character has dynamic, but then also character has dynamic with like other self, and they're different. And then like they learn that the truth, all these different selves are the same person, and they have to like reconcile all of their different feelings towards the, so here it's like they're chasing Vash the Stampede, the human disaster, who they're like, he's someone they have to like deal with. But then there's also this cool guy in a red coat who's just a nice guy, and it's like,
but he's also kind of like a bumbling idiot, and you're like, how could this guy be Vash the Stampede? And then it's like, oh, that's how. And like, yeah, I feel like that the way the anime presents it, I think just hits at like that contrast and like the two sides of his character very well. I feel like it leaves much more of an impact, and it also with his like pacifist ideals, I think get hammered in kind of more when it's like you see kind of the goofball first, and you get like flashes of the cool like humanoid typhoon Vash the Stampede. But then it takes a little bit for those two elements to kind of click together. And then it's like, then through that, it's like you understand why Vash was acting the way that he was. Because like once you learn more about him, it's like he has that tragic past. And that is still in the manga, but I think it's just, when
well, it hits different when the manga opens. The manga opens like, oh, the Vash Stampede, the $60 billion double dollar bounty man, right? Like it kind of hits you with it. That's the first thing it hit you with, So then that he's the, and then very soon it's like he's this human disaster. So there's no time to really think about the different sides of his character because you're given all of them, not all of them, but at once. So I see what you're saying. Sorry, I interrupted there.
I don't remember what the rest of what I was going to say
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Anyway.
Oh, right.
On.
I was going to say that, just like when Millie and Meryl, it's very different when they meet him for the first time and they're like, oh, this is Vash the Stampede. It's like, I guess there is still a bit of that expectations where they have the idea of Vash being this force of nature when in reality he's just kind of, I mean, he's both, but I don't know. I don't want this whole discussion to just be I liked how the anime did it better, but I think
I kind of don't mind that because, like, again, for my personal feeling is just. And I think, well, because even in the comments of the Cynic Clinic video, I didn't see a single person who said, like, having only read the manga, the anime seems really interesting. Like, the anime is what gets people into Trigun, because it was this Toonami favorite. It was this, like, known classic that people were really into. Like, I'm pretty sure, no, I actually don't think I've ever heard of anyone talking about the Trigun manga. Like, and that said, it's not a super popular title these days, but I feel like I've only heard about it in the context of people who like and care about the anime. So I feel like you giving that perspective is like, I mean, on one hand, yeah, it might, you know, as long as we're still talking about the manga, but people are going to connect with your perspective more likely, because if anyone has experience with Trigun, it's most likely to be people who've watched the anime, I feel like, or have gone through both, right? I feel maybe I'm completely wrong, and anyone in the comments is free to correct me, because, like, I don't know, just from an outside perspective, and having just read the manga literally like a couple days ago, I feel like, having only read the manga is odd. Like, yeah, so just I wanted to throw that out there. So anyway, we get to the I guess the next. Well, they end off that arc. I like how they resolve it, where it's like, well, you can't put a bounty on a human on a natural disaster, can you? So they're just like observing him and just keeping an eye on him. But I guess actually one thing, because I just realized one of those setting things that, I don't know, is maybe explained or explored in the anime, is just because I just realized, like, well, who do they work for? Did it come up in the manga and I'm just completely forgetting, or like I just remembered, like, I don't really understand how the overall, like, governing bodies work, because of course it's a Western thing. So, and part of the thing with Western is, you know, the Wild West. There's only like like smaller authorities. So, but they seem to be beholden to some kind of. I mean, someone has to put out the bounties. So
yeah, I forget what they call it. It's like some like insurance bureau or something like that. Gotcha. I think.
Because I just realized I probably like...
Bernadelli Insurance Society.
I see it. Okay, forgot about that, yeah. Okay, yeah, we just don't get a lot involving that group, so it's actually kind of funny that it's just an insurance company, because it's like, yeah, this motherfucker just keeps destroying shit, so we need to keep an eye on him, because, like, Jesus Christ, he just, you know, he was obviously blamed for destroying an entire town.
Yeah, I kind of like that aspect to the legend, where it's like, you know, he had a bounty on his head, so everyone targets him and kind of causes the destruction themselves in a way. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, he just isn't what his reputation gives off.
Yes, and even without the bounty, trouble still just tends to follow him anyway.
Yeah.
So
which I think also kind of ties in an interesting way later, when you know, there's kind of that conflict presented of, like, you know, Vash, you are a disaster. Like, you know, you are a weapon. You do bring destruction. Even though, like, he does everything he can to cause as little, like, injury and, like, death as possible.
Right, because as you know, since he doesn't, like, end conflicts by killing, you know, the people here have a potential to, you know, keep causing harm. But of course, this is also explored in other stories that we examine, like, you know, killing causes its own cycle of hatred. So there's definitely that idea of just, like, you know, I guess, like, the conflict will never end, and that's kind of what what was not knives, but the other, like,
Legato?
Thank you. Yeah, where he's he has his own feelings on that as well. But we'll get to him. There's only 5 characters. How am I struggling to remember their names? I'm kidding. But anyway, the sand steamer is where we really get some bits, a few more bits of Vash's backstory. There's a kid whose name I forgot. God damn it. I'm terrible.
I don't really remember the kid's name either, to be fair.
Okay.
Oh, there's the Nightow cat. The little black cat that kind of just wanders around and shows up occasionally. I think it's also in Kekai Sensen too. It just shows up in this mangaka's work.
Okay, it didn't even register to me as no. That's okay. It's
definitely more noticeable in the anime.
I bet. Okay,
because, like, you know, I don't just breeze past the panel.
Especially if you've also watched, like, you know, because I haven't not gone through Kekai Sensen either. So, It's like because I mean I have seen off like is it a representation of the author or is it just a trademark of his in a sense?
Like the author inserts at the end of the volumes, it's not the cat, so
that's true.
I'm not
okay,
sure.
Gotcha. Okay, because I was just thinking about how like Hidamari's sketch, the author insert shows up a lot in ways that they don't in the manga. And then what was it? Oh, I've been watching Sankatsu no Lion, and there's also just little Easter eggs in some of like they drink umi no beer, for instance, because it's just stuff labeled named after the author. And there was one instance where her little icon showed up as like a mascot character on a purchasable item. So just sometimes like in those cases it's more adaptational. But okay, yeah, interesting. So it didn't stick out to me. So neat. Trying to think of what I got out of the sand steamer conflict aside from learning more about Vash and his and I guess we did learn more about the setting with like the plants and stuff. I say we, but I really mean I because you already knew because you watched the anime.
Yeah, no, I remember really liking this conflict. There just being several little moments that I think stand out. Like, for instance, when Vash accidentally like shoots the one guy and injures him, and he's like, "Oh, fuck, no, he can't die. I fucked up already."
Mm-hmm.
And then the kid is just like, "Wait, you haven't been shooting to kill this entire time?" And I think just like, it's especially hammered home later when we see all the scars he has that just like, his pacifist philosophy is not like easy to adhere to. He's just that like his will is just that strong that like he's willing to do all this extra work. And like even in the fight, like the shootout with the guy in this arc, he he doesn't even I don't think he gets shot, but he just reopens his wounds, and the guy is just like, "Ah, come on," like
mm-hmm.
like he took damage, but he's just like, "What is this guy?"
Yeah, I was also gonna say I skimming through it a bit. I was remembering more pieces of the conflict. Like, Kaito is the kid's name, I think. And he cared about like because the ship was connected to his dad, and he died for his dream, and the kid kind of was like willing to let the ship crash because which was removing his father's legacy. Which I guess you could also think about that in the context of how that matches with Rem and how all of humanity is her legacy, and like Vash is protecting her legacy, but Kaito wasn't protecting his dad's legacy basically, and he sort of like connects with Vash over that and overcomes that, and then how it's contrasted in the leader of the Bad Lad gang, where he if you can't live well, die gloriously seems to be his ideal, right? Where just throw it all away, but in a blazing glory basically. I overall pretty neat stuff. The series very much has its like one core idea, and so far everything it feels, because I guess like you mentioned like it feels like kind of a shonen-y, more like a shonen later structurally with some of the stuff it brings in, but because I would say reading just these 3 volumes, because one of the things that makes me think like of shonen structure is just how like it is divided into these different arcs, and each of these different arcs has its own ideas, but also it'll explore the broad ideas of the series in some way, right?
Yeah.
Like the Chunin exams does partly have this conflict of like talent and hard work that isn't as strongly represented in the rest of Naruto, even though you can still read elements in there, but it's not like the biggest, most important idea of Naruto, for instance, right? Like, and so many arcs like One Piece and Bleach, Hunter x Hunter, like they all do this where they have their broad ideas. So, but we only read 3 volumes of Trigun, so I feel like even these smaller arcs are still building into this they're just continuing the same ideas basically, which makes it feel a little different in that way. But I do wonder if we get into Maximum, if it'll I don't know what else it could do basically, because I mean, hey, if it's 14 more volumes or 7, I forget how many more volumes of just furthering its own ideas, then that's great. But I was just wondering if it's like because I feel like there's only so much you can do to explore one idea. But maybe I'll be surprised. So, and I was gonna say, as far as like the art goes, one of the like the striking, I don't know, the way the plant looks of just like this like angel with the wings that are like weird like chicken babies things. It's just like really interesting imagery, and it definitely like it kind of stuck with me a bit even from reading the manga before. So just an interesting design decision. And of course, there's obviously like angel symbolism there with like Vash and Rem being the sort of creators of the world in a sense, and plants being fonts of life for humanity. So I'm not sure if I have any more to say about that arc.
Yeah, no, I feel like there's more to potentially read from this, but I don't know if I'm really seeing it right now.
Yeah, when you said you got more out of the second half anyway, right? So
yeah, well, because for me it was like, because I haven't seen the anime since 2016-ish.
Oh yeah, that's
so like it kind of it was the second volume that I feel like really reminded me of why I love Trigun in the first place. Or like the aspects of it I appreciated. Gotcha. Even if it's like they are present in the first volume, I just didn't. Yeah, I was mostly just noticing that like I liked how the anime did it better.
Unfortunate. I guess one example of exploring, and I'm trying to piece together if there was any more to take out, but I just thought of how like because after that we get Millie and Meryl talking about sending letters home basically, and Millie is like writing a shitload. She's just like tons of page where Meryl only writes like basically a postcard, or if that, not even that, because I think they'll translate actually because I'm going through. I have my fan scans downloaded, so I'm using that to go through. But I remember I like how the I'll have to look at the line actually because I liked how the translation handled it better. But just something about like the way she says it's dry, is like. Her life is dry in a sense. Like she's not enjoying the life that she has, basically, is kind of what I got out of it, which is like why she's not, or she doesn't feel that way because she's not sharing her life with her family and with the other people she cares about. I don't know, it was just something I thought about, because, in contrast, Millie is full of life and she has plenty to share with other people. So, I don't know, but then again, Meryl's just like, that would be, I feel like something that I'd keep an eye on for her later because she's not super important in the second half of the series just because like it's so much about Vash and Legato, and Wolfwood kind of comes in and it's like, oh hey, it's that guy who's super iconic, and then I think he fights a guy or something. He just shows up like literally like a couple chapters before the end of the manga. It's so sad.
Like kind of a thing. I guess it's sort of interesting how even when Meryl and Millie like get to see those two sides of Vash, it's like there's still a whole other like part of the equation that he doesn't let them in on until kind of the very end, or at least the very end of this reading. And yeah, like I thought that was kind of encapsulated really well later when like he hadn't referred to them by name ever before that. Okay, so it was sort of like, even though they were following him this whole time and they were kind of like, they had a camaraderie of sorts, he's still like, he's afraid of people getting close to him because they'll get hurt. And so like, he wasn't really like, I guess, fully acknowledging them in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, okay. I'll think about that. But anyway, into this arc, trying to remember more about it, because there's the family, the old people who were fostering this. They're growing greenery here, like actual life in a desert. And then there's the rest of the Nebraska family and a Badwick, which I this series does not leave me wanting for silly names, because it's like, oh, here's a bad looking guy. What do we call him? Badwick. And it's sort of the conflict with the parents having chased away their child basically, and Badwick sort of connecting to that. How did I frame it? Let me look at my notes. Because the old family is prepared to throw their lives away to protect the things that they nurtured, but Badwick didn't like grasp that, I guess. Which I guess is another way that you can connect these individual arcs to Rem and Vash.
Yeah, I do like the stuff with Millie in this section. It's kind of like the most she gets in this reading. Or wait, did I say Millie? I meant Meryl.
Okay, I was about to say it's because like okay, I'm not the only one who's like has to like okay, which one is which because yeah, they only have so much presence.
Millie is the tall one with the giant gun, and then Meryl is the other one.
Yes. I don't know. The one who feels more important to me, like more of a main between the two.
Yeah. I also kind of like how just the dynamic of like the tall one and the short one, like the short hot-tempered one. Like I don't know. That's popped up in some other things, like the Vegeta and Nappa kind of.
Yes. Yes.
It's silly and good.
Oh, also I like Meryl shooting the Nebraska or one of the antagonists, and they get like blasted away, and then it's like, how did I do that? And then it's like, no, Vash was repaying his debt. So
yeah, just her staring at the gun with all the like question marks as Millie is just like, we warned you. Next time she'll. Yeah, it's
it's funny.
I also think that just the way this conflict, like protecting the little bit of land, it's like, I guess it kind of ties into how like Vash says at the end of the last, the steam engine fucking conflict that like, your ticket to the future is always blank. Like,
yes.
And the way that he doesn't kill people because like he believes that anyone can change, and it's like every life is precious, and that's sort of represented by like in this sort of barren wasteland of a planet, there's like this little bit of greenery, and it's like protecting that is everything.
Yeah, and that's I was, as you're saying that, I was like, oh yeah, and that's what happens with Badwick, because at first he was with the antagonists, like working alongside them, but then he eventually becomes the one who inherits the land, and as like a sort of son to the old couple, and protecting it, even though he literally just met these people, but he came to value life and protect it, and because like you said, I forgot to bring that up from the last arc, but yeah, everyone's future is a blank check, which is really cool.
And the old man also says, all of life is connected.
Yeah, I'm definitely appreciating it more talking about it, because reading it, I was definitely not there emotionally, but now I'm like thinking about it, it's like, yeah, like it's like clicking together how all the arcs kind of connect to Rem and Vash, and their sort of their relation to the world, basically. But anyway, next arc, Vash is playing with some kids, then boom, imposing looking guy with giant shoulder pads and spikes on him.
Even though I haven't seen the anime in like almost a decade, the imagery in this chapter, like even in a different medium, is still very striking to me. Like all the benches sitting around the fountain and the birds, I immediately was like, oh, this is when this happens. Which also kind of another detail that I find interesting. In the anime, Wolfwood was introduced before this happens. Like right before.
Well, see, that's what I was going to point out, because I knew about, I knew about Vash, and I wouldn't have been able to name him, but I knew Wolfwood because I remember I referenced in One Piece, because, like, there was the part of Wano where Sanji in a suit was carrying around, like, Zoro, who was so covered in bandages, he was like a cross, and I was like, this is reminding me of Trigun a little, is it? And you were like, yeah, it's Wolfwood, and I'm like, oh, okay, which maybe it was unintentional, but it's still really funny, because I've never heard about Legato. Like, he was a complete, like, I don't, like he was as new to me as anything else in Trigun, because I hadn't gone through it, so it was interesting that, like, because I guess just from the outside, I thought of, like, Wolfwood and Vash being these kind of, like, bro rival characters, and, like, Wolfwood's, like, the second most important character in Trigun. And then Legato comes in, who's very much more of this, like, antagonistic rival counterpart character, and in the reading he definitely had more, like, Wolfwood kind of comes in and has a little fighting, and then, but again, that's kind of it. So it's interesting, like, where it's like, Wolfwood was introduced first in the anime, and like, oh, okay.
The way that Wolfwood is handled, kind of, like, I thought it was really interesting comparing the two, because, like, in the anime, there's a little bit more of, like, like I said, Wolfwood gets introduced before the whole conflict with the 12 assassins comes up. Like, that happens, I think, after Wolfwood leaves to go do something else. Like, he shows up and he's around for a few episodes, and there's a lot more of, like, Wolfwood and Vash working together, which I think does kind of seem to establish more of that, like, rival dynamic.
Yeah.
So, like, it's interesting, because, like, in the anime, they use that to sort of bridge between, like, the other, like, the Sand Steamer conflict into, like, the stuff with the assassins. But, like, in the manga, Wolfwood being introduced after the introduction of Legato, I think is like, equally interesting, because, like, in the manga, we have this really, like, shocking moment that sets up a lot of, like, a big conflict to go ahead and gives Vash, like, his first hint towards, like, the whereabouts of knives. And so it all gets real serious, and, you know, like, he gets arrested, and like, a conflict starts, so he, like, is at a real, like, low point. And so then meeting Wolfwood afterwards kind of seems like a little moment of hope for him, that it's like, oh, here's this guy who has, like, a good heart, and you know, they seem to kind of get along. But, you know, when there's the little hint of, like, oh, Chapel's not here.
Yep, okay.
And then you see the man with the cross, it's like, oh, okay.
Okay, see, because I did pick up on that possibility from just what little we got here, because it's like, oh, Chapel's not here. It's like, what character was introduced recently that's literally bearing a giant cross on his back? But then they didn't reveal that, if that was the case, I don't think, because the manga just ended. So okay, it's apparently the anime does go into that, because I definitely had that, like, inkling. But okay, that just confirmed it, really. So I'm not spoiled by it, because I did kind of figure it out on my own. But I guess we just spoiled anyone who hasn't watched the anime, both of you. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. Oops.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
But I mean, if you've read this reading, then, like, it's in it.
Oh wait,
but yeah,
did they
so,
directly
like,
say it later, or
Well, yeah, because he shows up with all of the other guys around
okay,
when
gotcha. I must have just slipped my
Knives
mind.
shows up.
Okay.
What was I gonna say? Wolfwood. Yeah, no, I think just I like both approaches, I think, but the anime does definitely add something a little different, with there being kind of a friendship between Wolfwood and Vash, where, like, they've had some conflicts together, and it's like they're competing against each other in that, like, you know, competitive rival way, but, like, you don't get the idea that Wolfwood is an antagonist. And then, you know, obviously later, when, you know, the whole thing with Chapel, and, like, he is tied into that, it's like, oh, so it kind of, like, plays in with Vash, where, like, here's this character who has this other aspect to him that they didn't know about, and there's, like, a level of like, betraying trust, kind of, or something like that.
Or even in other ways, maybe, like, you know, in another circumstance, we could have been friends, kind of thing, because, like, you know, they were friends, but then Wolfwood had this other allegiance that, you know, I don't know the full details, so
yeah, like, I don't think I'll talk much about the anime original stuff, like the ending, because I don't think I remember it all that well. But yeah, it's just kind of interesting how the anime does it. But, like, in the manga, when you're now starting to see, like, these kind of episodic chapters where an assassin shows up, I feel like it fits really well structurally with that. And, like I said, tonally, it kind of offers, like, a little bit of relief before it's like, oh, it's not actually, it's not good.
Yeah, no. I also was gonna say, one thing I appreciate about the manga that I don't think you can replicate in the anime is because he'll like have the cover and back cover, and then the underside will be like a very goofy, like, version of it. I don't. Was that in the official release, or do you know what I'm talking about? Here, let me show you. Okay.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Oh yeah. Okay, get that. Yeah. Because we'll just have the cover and then a goofy version of the cover where it's just silly.
Yeah, I didn't notice that, but I see what you mean.
Like the one I'm looking at now, it's like has like Legato looking all cool on the cover with all his assassins, and then it's like changed to like a beach ocean scene, and he's getting bitten by a shark. And Wolfwood's like a mermaid now, or he has like the shell bikini. I don't know. It's silly. But anyway,
I think one thing I do like about the manga, like the manga's presentation at this moment, and I mean, like, I think a lot of the strong points that the anime has are like built off the foundation of the manga, but just like, you know, Vash kind of having that introspective moment, and then like trying to help out these like poor kids and play with them. It's really lighthearted, and then you get the 2-page spread where Legato just walks past him, and it's a very sudden like tone shift.
Yeah, and because like, oh, all these smaller panels go to one big 2-page spread, literally just to introduce this character, and Vash his expression is just suddenly like, oh, it's more serious.
Yeah,
and of course, like, you know, he's sort of like, you know, he's trying to force Vash into killing, and so he's like, you know, I will do all this violence if you don't, you know, like he even just fucking kills the guy and leaves the head in the bag. In an instant. So, and of course, that's when he's like, "Oh yeah, gotta get these 12 halves of the coins." That's what you mentioned. It's like, yeah, it's like, oh, yep, it's Shounen. Not that I had any doubt, but it's yeah.
I also like that, you know, Millie catches the very like subtle shift in Vash's like before he puts the glasses on. Like in the art, he still looks like but like Wolfwood kind of mentions it later that like Vash is always smiling, but it's like it's a hollow smile. It's like put on, and I guess, you know, that kind of comes off in the art here. And yeah, just I like this. I just feel like this whole sequence is very chilling. Where like, you know, the poor child that like the one dressed in like rags that Vash gave like some ice cream earlier, like, you know, it's just Legato pulls out like the sandwich he has, and it's like, oh, he's doing this nice thing, but it's very clearly in this like very sinister, like, I could kill everyone in this town right now if I wanted to, and so like Vash is just terrified. I like that, just that like unsettling vibe.
The one thing you just made me think about is because you brought up Wolfwood's line that he says later, because that definitely stuck out to me. But what I hadn't pieced together until you said it again was that, or because he also says like your smile hurts to see. I was just thinking about how like it's not an uncommon trope to have like characters who are super like cheery and Genki also be you know, covering something darker, or right, like even in fucking Hidamari's sketch, like there's some weird lines Miyako says that are just like, you know, and she's poor, like she's gone through some things, you know, but she's also just like endlessly fun and happy. You know, but what I thought about with Vash, that's also kind of interesting, like another angle to it that I hadn't considered, because again, as I mentioned before, Vash is kind of like a parent figure to this world. He's 150 years old. He's one of the people trying to guide it into a good direction, like as a paternal figure. Like I feel like Shonen usually comes from the more youthful perspective, right?
Yeah.
But Trigun does sort of invert that by having Vash, the main character, be he's the elder in a sense. And one thing I thought about is like, so one thing I remember from like babysitting and just like raising kids in general is like when they get hurt, it's very easy to like to see, or like, what's the line? I think it was Travis who I on one of the Critical Role discussions of just like, oh, it was from Examiner Limited. He was talking about how like having a kid is like a line that he heard and that he really felt when he had a kid was you know, having a child is like having your heart like ripped out of you and given physical form and walking around, basically, right? Because it's like you care about that child so much that it's like having a part of you outside, and so anytime something potentially happens, you feel that fear, right? So when your kid gets hurt, you're gonna want to worry, but you don't want to panic them. So you have to like pretend everything's fine, right? Like did you fall? You know, like, and so just that level of like Vash, he's pretending everything's fine. Right, like even though the world, his child, so to speak, you know, is like in constant violence, right? So and he has to put on a good face to keep from worrying them as a parent. And I just hadn't thought about that until you reminded me of that line, and I was like, oh yeah, that's interesting, because I hadn't thought about that. Though of course he is also a child figure himself to Rem, because she's like his mom, like, because there's the flashback after the Legato stuff where he's a child with Rem. So yeah, and yeah, we get that flashback of knives and the crashing of the ship or the struggles with the ship that ended up killing Rem. And of course, Knives just saying he sees the check for humanity's future as they're just going to ruin it anyway, right? So why don't we'll be the creators of the world, as he says. So setting up their antagonistic relationship. Anyway, then we get one of the first of the coin bearers, the Donev, I think, or no, am I thinking of an older character? All right, Monev, excuse me. And yeah, we sort of see how Legato operates because Vash doesn't kill him, of course, but Legato does because again, trying to force Vash into that position that he doesn't want to be in.
I also just like the names of some of the groups in this series are kind of like the Bad Lad Gang and the Gung-Ho Guns. Like, they're silly, but like silly in a cool way. I don't know. It works.
I'm trying to remember because I think we later, I don't have them on hand, but later on when we get Meryl and Millie's like nicknames, because they were, what were they? I'll bring it up if I remember because I didn't write them down. But I just remember they stood out to me as just being, I don't know. Yeah, it's very over the top and fun. Oh, also, I just got to the scene of Vash where we see his body and how messed up it is, and he's got like the fucking giant scars and tons of like metal supporting his body. And but the way it kind of plays out is because you have like he comes out and then but he like hides himself like in a like he's got a funny expression, like it almost reads like a reverse pervert character moment. Where it just
for me, I feel like that moment also kind of read as like, or I would imagine like the trope is more like, oh, like the girl sees the guy like in a state of undress and is like, right. Oh, he's hot. But here it's like, okay, oh God, what happened to you?
But yeah, it just made me think.
But no, I think you're also correct. Like yeah.
Okay, yeah. I said perfect character moment. It's more just like reverse, like because normally it's like the opposite. The guy walks in on the girl, and and then oh no, they're awkward, and the girl maybe hits him or something like that. But this is like they walk in on Vash, and he's not naked, but he is in a state of undress, and the way he covers himself, especially, is what made me think that.
Yeah, he definitely has kind of like that traditional sort of mindset of like, oh, like, protect the women and children, like they shouldn't see these scars. I forget exactly how he says it in that little interaction. I am way behind.
Oh, sorry. I was wondering if you have anything to say about Monev, that because I kind of just went through that and you didn't say much, so I just thought you didn't have. Sorry, I'm going too fast.
I don't know that I had so much to say about him specifically, but I do like the general recurring thing with the Gung-Ho Guns that we didn't get to see a whole lot of it in this reading because it ended off before that whole conflict got concluded. But I do like the sort of conflict they present, and like Vash doesn't ever kill them, but it's usually like they do end up dying in some way because like they either get kind of like eaten alive by the, consumed by their own like comrades or allies, or maybe they're not even allies, but just like people of the same cause. Like almost like either, there's like the one who just, jumps off the ledge and commits suicide because they're afraid of like the horrors of, I forget if it was Knives or Legato specifically they mentioned.
I'd assume Legato because that's what I thought was interesting about how, because obviously like Legato's trying to like make Vash feel like burden him basically, and with the lives that he's deliberately not trying to control, and then oh no, they're just gonna, and they are gonna die anyway. Like that's the kind of perspective Knives has, and then because especially like the way Legato kills the first one. Then we get the second one, number 2, E.G. Mine, or Mine? I think Mine, but I don't know if it's supposed to be English or Japanese pronunciation. But like, because Vash beats him and then Legato just fucking kills him immediately. And but I like the way that or no, actually no, never mind. I think Vash, if anything, saves him. But then he calls out Legato, and I like how because I fuck your rules. I'm just gonna go after you if you're gonna keep killing these people, right? Like, instead of being stuck in Legato's game, basically, he's just going to fight the game master, so to speak. Yeah, it's cool. I'll let you catch up to the end of that second fight if you have any more to say about that.
I think it's also just kind of, I don't know, like, sometimes with, like, these sort of shonen battle conflicts, like, you know, where, like, the protagonist has to fight, like, the mooks to get to the final boss or whatever. Sometimes I feel like some of the fights where they really struggle and I'm like, this isn't what I want to see. I want to see the cool stuff. That I don't really have that feeling with Vash and the Assassins, because I feel like, you know, part of his pacifism is that, like, he has to really struggle to not kill them. Like, it would be easier for him if he did that, but it's because, like, he is so committed to his ideals that, like, so that the fact that he struggles against all of them in different ways, I guess not really the second one, he kind of breezes through that guy. But yeah.
Earlier I thought it was Knives, but it was Legato was the one who said, like, you know, all of humanity will be reduced to ashes, so why are you so impatient to die? Like, he's not, you know, you know, it all comes to nothing, basically, you know. It's a nihilism versus existentialism conflict, so, which I tend to dig those, but hopefully Maximum delivers on that more so in a way that or if I watch the anime, than these 3 volumes did, but
I think it's also interesting how, like, Legato ends up killing a lot, like, this gang, so they're not good people, and I think one of the assassins even says, like, you know, don't worry, that pile of bodies wasn't, like, they weren't innocent bystanders, and Vash is still, like, you don't get to make that decision.
Yeah.
Which I think, it's good to just kind of hammer home that, like, you know, it's not just, like, Vash saves the people he wants to save, it's like he doesn't think anyone should die, even if they're, like, horrible people. Which, you know, it's kind of like pros and cons to that for him.
Right. Because, yeah, if they have no desire to repent, then they're just going to cause more harm, and, you know, when he had the chance to theoretically stop them, but, yeah.
Also, just, Jesus Christ, Legato's powers of, like, manipulating people. Legato, for me, is, like, I didn't remember Knives all that much, probably because he's only in so much material before the anime original stuff happens.
I imagine, I'll ask about it later, but go ahead.
I was just saying that, like, Legato has this very striking presence to me where, like, his powers are very, like, horrifying, and he just has, you know, very intimidating presence. He's a piece of shit. No,
I was even just thinking about how, like, it feels like the kind of case where, like, the lieutenant just has way more presence than the big bad. And it's very possible that, like, that can change, like, later on, because, like, I was just thinking, in my head, I was just thinking about, Dragon Quest I's Great Adventure, where the big bad doesn't really have that much presence until, like, the end of the manga, but at that point, I do think he, like, very much, like, fills his role as, but then sometimes you get cases like, say, Star Wars, where, like, Darth Vader is just so much more, like, iconic and memorable as a character, and has this presence that Sidious never has, even when in the movie he does show up, right? So this feels like more like that case where Legato, he's the one fucking with Vash. He's the one acting on the floor, so even, on the ground level. So even if Knives is technically like the big bad, you know, and of course a big part of that is probably just because of the way the manga shakes out. But Legato just is way more standout in that way. So yeah. And he literally makes the fucking slaver rip his own heart out, which is just Jesus Christ.
I also kind of like how the chapter ends where, you know, it's like he wasn't doing it because the guys were bad people. He wasn't doing it to, like, you know, end the human trafficking. He's just like, you know, I don't usually waste time on vermin. Isn't that interesting, Vash? Your very existence is a never-ending irritation. So, like, he's just, I don't know. Like, Vash is just living in his head rent-free, I guess.
Yeah. Also, I like when because in that same chapter we see Vash talking about how he's gonna hunt Legato, and then but we see we see the smile we see on his face, like when he's like glad for that, like ooh boy, he's a motherfucker.
I am definitely curious if, because I know there is some Maximum content adapted into the anime,
Ooh, okay.
and I'm very curious to see if the stuff I'm thinking of is in the manga.
Yeah, it's only like because in the Cineclip video he only mentioned that 2 chapters. So, but I didn't see because he even did a very brief like flash on the screen, like this is what chapter was adapted into which episode. I'm gonna go find that real quick because it was interesting because I want to see if they were adapted into the manga.
My thing was just like I obviously don't know what those Trigun Maximum chapters cover yet.
Right. So yes, there it is. Found the video. Now I just gotta. It's only 8 minutes, so hopefully I can scrub through it and find the thing I'm looking for. He also brings up, as he calls it, the worst website in the world, the fucking anime filler guide thing, which is like awful.
Yeah.
I think I passed it. Yeah, there it is.
I think also just like I know I've been talking about the anime a lot, but like as far as for me, Legato having more of a presence than Knives, I definitely think that's a case of Trigun had like barely told its story. I feel like it only got a few volumes in, and then you look at Trigun Maximum, and it's like I don't know. Actually, I don't even have the numbers up, but it's a lot longer. So there's probably a lot that just hadn't been written yet.
Mm-hmm. Also, so I'm looking at his episode guide right now. I'll include a visual, but basically he said so. Episode 17 adapts Trigun Maximum chapters 4 and 5. Episode 18, am I just missing it? Did he just... yeah, I think he forgot to put what chapter it was. But it also... Episode 18 adapts an unknown amount of Trigun Maximum. It basically... the last chapter that gets adapted is episode 20 is chapter 12. So, but it doesn't look like that it adapts every single chapter unless episode 18 somehow adapts chapters 7 through 11 and chapter 1. But yeah, so it does. Okay, that's more than I thought.
I feel like Maximum. I think it would make sense. Like I'll be able to judge more when we read the first stretch of Maximum. I imagine like whatever conflict the anime was really leaning into, they just kind of focused on the chapters that built on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm very curious about because I'll probably I'm definitely gonna watch the anime at some point now because it sounds like I shouldn't miss it because especially talking about it, it's like no, I'm more interested in Trigun than I thought. I just wasn't really getting a lot of enjoyment out of reading the manga. I think it'll be easier going forward just because Maximum actually I assume it gets the conclusion that the author was hoping for. I hope so. God, it would be so sad.
Yeah, like a decade later, and it's like, oops, sorry.
Poor fucking Hiroyuki Take, where it's like, oh God, I got my health. I got to finish Shaman King, but now I'll do the sequel, Flowers. It's like, wait, the magazine it was in got canceled, and I have to figure that out somehow? Well, fuck. It's so unfortunate. But anyway, after the Legato stuff, we get Wolfwood, the guy, the man.
I had a funny interaction on Twitter. Like, I posted that I was rereading Trigun, and just like, I'm curious what the manga does differently with Wolfwood, because I've heard it's different, I just don't know how. And someone replied with, like, that, like, image of the puppet, like, looking at the camera and then looking away. And I'm just like, oh, that's concerning.
What does it do differently with Wolfwood? Well... It doesn't do that much, all things considered, because, like, yeah, it comes in, he bros it up with Vash, he goes off, and,
it's hard to forget cool a guy with a giant cross on his back.
It's so, like, that's just one of those images that stuck with me, not having touched Trigun, of, like, yeah, he's a cool dude in a suit with a giant fucking cross on his back. You just don't forget that. And, yeah, he's, like, a cool guy, he helps out some kids, he gets into some fighting.
I also like how he's introduced as kind of, like, oh, my motorcycle broke down, or my bike broke down, and he's like dehydrated. He just looks he's just out of his depth. Like he's introduced looking kind of silly,
and
but it's like, he actually has this big presence, and yeah, I just really love his interactions with Vash, because you can tell that they're both like, I feel like it's a cop out to just say, oh, they're such complex characters or motivations or whatever. But like, they've both been through some shit, and it seems like, at least what we've seen of Wolfwood so far, that like he does have like the betterment of other people in mind. Like, he says he worked at an orphanage and like he has no money. But even when these like starving kids walk up to him, he still is like, well, I only have 3 coins, so you have one, and I'll have one. So it's like, even when he's down on his luck, he's still in, he still tries to.
See, now I'm wondering, because like he is ultimately part of, Legato and Knives' gang. So I'm just trying to think of like, well, because like what I'm just realizing, because like, again, with his character, yeah, he's a cool guy. But he's ultimately with the bad guys, like that's or the antagonists rather. I'm struggling to get, but even just like thinking about like these elements and how they might factor in, and this might be one of those cases where I like describe things and you're just like sitting in your chair like, fuck, I don't want to say anything because it relates to maximum content we haven't gone to or anime original content, but like, yeah, because at the end of the day, I assume he just wants humanity gone like Legato, basically, because he's part of that group. Well, and one thing I thought about is, it was interesting. I read a novel called The Stranger recently, which it ends with the main character in jail, and a priest is basically coming. And what's interesting is the priest talks about how like he's not interested in like saving the main character. He's just interested in saving him spiritually, basically. Like, he doesn't care what he's done. He just wants him to recognize God so that he can go into heaven. Right, so I thought of Wolfwood, and it's like, well, if he's a priest, then, so yeah, as he can still be fine with the death of humanity, but he just wants their souls saved first so that they go to a good place after the fact, right? Like, I can see that principle work. And then just the way he's like, oh, 1 coin for each of us. It's like, he's part of humanity. He's prepared to go too, right? Like, it's all even. Everyone dies, right? Like, their only equality is in death, basically. It's just like I can see ways of his character that seem really nice as can be built up to.
Yeah, like, I also kind of had the thought, because I don't remember his character super well, and the anime might have gone in a total... It sounds like the anime goes in a different direction almost entirely.
Okay.
But I could see it also being like, maybe he wants to prevent the suffering of like,
yes,
all life by just exterminating it, so they don't have to.
I just fucking remembered Ohm from One Piece, the guy who fights Zoro in Skypiea, where he's just like, oh yes, human suffering. I'll just kill everybody, and it's like, wait, hold on, something like he's just so stupid. But it was portrayed in a gag way. But I can see Wolfwood potentially being a serious example of that.
I feel like maybe there's another character that has some similar kind of ideal of like, you'll be saved in the afterlife, free the spirit or whatever, but
I can't remember.
Not off the top of my head.
But maybe someone in the comments will remember. But no, I've just like, now that we're talking about Wolfwood again, because now that I'm thinking of him as like, oh yeah, really think about him as a potential like later antagonist and part of this antagonistic group. I was just theorizing on ways that he might fit into that, but because, we don't really see that here. He's just, like, we just see him as part of the group later on, as you mentioned. And I kind of missed it, so I was just sort of taking the very clear, like, foreshadowing of Chapel missing. And it's like, Because it's like, if there's an empty space, and there's a thing, like, you're going to wonder what fills the space, and you're going to only have the information that we have. And it's like, Wolfwood just kind of neatly fit, it's a cross-filled space. Wolfwood just fits right in. It's just if the manga doesn't do anything to make me doubt that, then but anyway, we get or do you have any more to say, or can we get to or are we going to talk about the number 3 fight?
Oh right, yeah, I guess he does also have that line about like he says, it's about time I left the church anyway. I figured there was no hope till I made some money for them. And then Vash is like, make money as a priest, and he's like confused, and it's not really elaborated on. Oh well, because then he runs into the kids and gives them the coins, I feel like I need to be looking harder at this chapter to be like, okay, what's the double layer meaning of like
right?
all of these interactions?
Because I just came up with a couple possibilities, like just thought it's like, wait, hold on, I didn't recontextualize. Because like that's the thing, like as a writer, I would want to do if I was introducing a character and wanting to be like obfuscate their actual role in the story. I'd still want to put hints as to their actual role in the story, so there's a level of like, yeah, we want to dig in and see like, oh, what could this mean for later down the line? So yeah, I gotcha.
I mean, like, it could also be a thing where, like, Wolfwood might be part of the Assassins, but maybe he has, like, a change of heart.
Right,
and because of, like, whatever his ideals are.
Or yeah, exactly. Or maybe he just doesn't agree with them in some other ways, and, like, he has other reasons to be involved with them. Like, there's a bunch of ways it could go. That was just the one that came to mind. And yeah, apparently the anime does, it does things differently by doing things with him at all, I think. So... Mm-hmm.
I think also, I'm seeing the page where, like, Wolfwood, it looks like he's about to leave, or he's just doing a weird pose, and then his, like, stomach rumbles, and then, like, in the next panel, he's, like, his stomach rumbles louder, and he starts making noises, and he just looks at Vash, like, do something, and Vash is like, all right, I'll get you food, and he's like, oh, you're such a good guy.
Yeah, they have a funny dynamic.
And then just hard cut to a pile of bodies.
Yeah. Legato.
Why do you think I let half of you live? My reason's completely practical. So you can tend to the bodies. I'm sure the crematorium will turn a profit. Jesus.
Ooh, yeah, he's a glue boy.
Oh, yeah, I also, I don't know if there's a whole lot to necessarily read into the line he has, but, like, it was mere luck that spared you from becoming a slab on that mountain behind me. Like, I don't know if that might factor into his ideals at all. Like, maybe he was just unlucky to be in a certain position.
Well, that's a good point. Because, I mean,
it's like, if he killed, or, like, if the assassin killed, like, half the gang, it could have been any of them realistically. Yes. But, you know, by chance, some of them had to live.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting, because I did think about Knives for a second. I realized, wait, that's not Legato, that's a different character. Because, like, but no, in that case, it's like, yeah, there were two of them, but I don't know, maybe we'll get more about Knives and Vash's backstory, where it's similar, where it's like, you know, if it had been differently, maybe our roles would have been reversed, kind of thing. Like, maybe that'll turn out to be a factor into, like, because we don't really know why Knives is the way that he is. He just went on the ship and had these ideals and wanted to destroy it all, basically.
I see you, Nightow. You're not subtle. On the page introducing all of the assassins by name, followed by a page where he's like, Chapel seems to be missing. Well, no matter. And then the next panel over is Wolfwood talking to Vash.
I didn't notice that, but because I did think of it about who could Chapel be, but no, it's literally like, because I feel like, oh my god, I'm just imagining how they could have done that in an animated adaptation. Probably didn't, but like just they're like, oh, Chapel's not here, and they're like showing like an empty spot where Chapel could be, and then it just cuts and Wolfwood's in that empty spot, but in a different place, and it's like, oh, there it is.
Yeah, because then it cuts to Vash describing Legato and Wolfwood.
Ominous ellipse of ... As he's, looking back, it's like, it's even more obvious than I thought it was, so, or at least the foreshadowing is more clear, let's put it that way, because I can see someone just reading through it and just not putting that, especially if you're a Japanese reader and you don't know what Chapel means in English, right, like, that's, because it's, because they could have called him, like, you know, Chaparu, or whatever, however you would pronounce it in Japanese, and, you wouldn't instantly... now I'm just imagining, like, really shitty fan scans that just don't just leave it as is, or just some fucking Bistro Mi Bear, or for Bartholomew Kuma shit, and just, completely bastardize it.
Are chapels, like, much of a thing in Japan? Like, I know they're very, like, traditional, but I don't know about...
Probably, but even if they were, they might not just be called chapels. They might be called by a different word.
That's true.
You'd have to know the English word and what it means to make that connection.
Yeah. I guess I was curious if they're even, like... I imagine there are some things in English that just don't have a Japanese equivalent.
Yeah, well, and
So it could
sometimes
be a
they
loan word, or
yeah, right. Like, well, because I was just thinking about the loan word of juice or juicu, where it doesn't just mean like fruit juice; it also can mean just a sweet drink in general, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that's an English word that they use, but they don't use it in the same way we use it. So
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I don't know how the translation went for that because neither the fan translation or the official one had a note regarding that, and they both use the same word. So like they don't call them church or anything. They don't say church or anything like equivalent you could use. So
I also like, I guess the idea that Meryl and Millie didn't even really notice Legato, that like his actions were so subtle. Like, because he says either like, did he disguise himself that easily, or did he make himself invisible? Is I don't know. It's interesting. I also just reading too much into the line of Wolfwood, like, well, if I see that guy, you know, what should I do? Do you have a message for him? And it's like, he knows he's gonna see him.
He's being such a cheeky shit.
And Vash says not to get involved, and it's like, too late.
Yeah.
But I heard you were the most dangerous man in the world. Ha ha ha.
Oh boy. But anyway, so yeah, following that we get what's her name? Dominique the Cyclops, who's the next assassin. But yeah, while they're fighting, Wolfwood goes to a church because he's got his own conflict going on.
Well, there's also in like I definitely didn't forget this character interaction where the assassin shows up and is like, right now, if I'd wanted to, I could have killed you 3 times. And then they talk for a bit. And then Vash is like, you know, if I had wanted to during this conversation, I could have groped you 5 times. And it's like, ugh. Like, I get that he's a pacifist, but is that really much better? Yeah. Like, I guess it's to show that it's like he's not, I don't want to say he's not taking it seriously, but like he's just trying to find ways to get his opponents to like, he's trying to defeat them without like killing them. That's just kind of a weird way to go about it, I think.
Yeah. Did he have pervert moments earlier? Because I feel like it was. I feel
he
like
does
there was,
occasionally.
Okay, gotcha.
I know in the not prologue. The what the fuck is it called?
The one shot.
Yeah, the one shot. The pre. I can't think of the word. Damn it. But yeah, he has like, you know, there's a girl tied up and he like tries to look up her skirt.
That was it. Yeah. Okay. I was trying to remember because I was like, this isn't out of nowhere, right? But okay.
No, he has that sort of like old school like chivalry, but he can still occasionally be like, oh, it's part of his goofy nature. I don't know.
You know, another series like because I just remembered it, and we might, if it gets voted on, we might end up reading it. But because I just realized like, wait, hold on, things are clicking together because I just realized like how Plunderer has a few similarities to Trigun. The setting is very different because it's more of a fantasy thing than a Western thing, but just like the main character doesn't want to kill. He has pervert elements, like, and there's a couple more similarities that I could bring up, but it's like, because I was getting vibes, and I just remembered that one too as like, oh, Plunderer is like, it's more like Trigun than I thought at first because just a random connection because Plunderer is one of my favorite manga, but and it handles the no killing thing in a very different way, but that's also just that's like a 20 volume series. This is or 22 volume series. This is somewhere in that range, and this is I've only read 3 of these volumes, so I don't know, just something that came to mind.
Fun fact, at one point, like back in 2017, when I was doing like the thematic breakdown videos, well, I didn't do many of them, but when I had the concept in my head, I had the idea to do like a comparison between like Edward Elric and Vash and like their different approaches to, you know, kind of pacifism. I haven't interacted really with either series much since, like, I haven't rewatched or read Full Metal Alchemist since like 2015 or whatever. So like couldn't do that now, or if I'd even be interested. But
right. No, I honestly kind of forgot about that element for Ed's character because I haven't touched Full Metal Alchemist in so long. But
yeah,
okay.
you were just talking about other characters with like pacifist conflicts, and
I guess speaking of that, we also just read Shaman King, so I guess
that's true.
I feel like if we're gonna bring it up, we can't. It would be silly to ignore the one that we just talked about. So yeah.
Well, Shaman King is definitely very different because like
because
character
of how it
death
handles
is
the metaphysical,
different.
Yeah, yes, death, and exactly that's fair. But it was still an aspect of like Yo specifically didn't want to kill people, so
yeah.
But anyway, I'm not sure if I have much to say about the fight itself, and more just like the aftermath. Oh wait, shit! I just completely missed it because I'm looking for I'm like Wolfwood gets to the church and meets Legato, and it's like, "You're a chapel, are you not?" And it's like, "Oh, yeah." They just fucking stayed out right. I forgot. I just completely missed that, I guess. But yeah, Dominic decides to kill herself because, that's the only outcome she saw for losing, pretty much. So if Vash wasn't gonna kill her, then she'll do it. She'll do the job.
Yeah, I guess there's kind of almost like a tools versus humanity kind of thing going on there because like once this assassin God, I'm bad at remembering names. But, like, once she's not really an effective weapon anymore, like, once she's unable to really fight effectively, she just is like, all right, I'm done. As opposed to Vash, who deliberately avoids killing people for the sake of, like, giving them another chance. That, like, people can always, like start a, wipe the slate clean and, blank ticket to the future and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, wait, maybe Wolfwood hadn't met Legato before because he points out the skull and the torture device.
Oh, okay. Weird. Okay, I'm reading this scene and I'm like, what? I definitely read it, but like, I guess I didn't get anything out of it because I'm going through it again. It's like, wait, why didn't I get anything out of this? This is like, because like they're talking about it builds up to the fucking angel, the plant imagery where it's like you have the bulbous belly. I wonder if this is around the point where this is the second to last chapter, I think, because so at this point they were probably aware, maybe he was aware that the manga was going to end because of the magazine suddenly just getting pulled out, getting canceled. So
well, actually we were kind of speculating about Wolfwood earlier, but I see he does have a line like, once again, I'm staining my own hands with blood, and he seems to be, like, not happy about that.
That's true. Okay, yeah, no, okay. Nah, throw my old ideas out. Never mind. They're not even that old. They're, like, 5 minutes old.
And then just, after all this time, what's it worth? In the end, can I escape?
Okay, interesting.
If I run, I'll be devoured, so it's just,
Interesting. I'm definitely curious as to how that'll get followed up on. Because I expect it'll be a maximum, but,
I also like the way that this manga uses shadows sometimes. Like, there are several... Oh, you know what? Actually, I see the connection. Like, when the first assassin mentions, like, oh, like, this is your true character, Diablo, and, like, Vash is all shaded and, like, you don't... Like, his eyes are just kind of, like, glowing, and, like, basically, like, he's all shaded over. And then... when they go to awaken or revive Knives, then when Vash, like, it cuts to him and he's, like, shaded over again. So I don't know if that's, like, a way of visualizing how his past is, like, hanging over him and that different side to his story.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought I was about to sneeze. But anyway, Knives is awakened, reborn, so to speak. Jesus Christ, the page with him being born, like there's even a fucking umbilical cord. Like, God, what the fuck? Like, it's just so out there, I think. Like, it was definitely like, I don't know, they stuck with the plants, the angels, definitely like stuck with me just because it's so like beyond the aesthetic of the Western, stuff, so it's just it makes it feel more alien. And it's also, actually think about it, because that's the source of life in this world, yet it's portrayed in such a way. It's, I don't know, it's interesting to me. I'm wondering if, like, maybe part of the goal at the end of the story will be like, because we saw with the old couple is that, like, it is possible to grow green in this world, so maybe they'll, you know, growing green on their own, like humanity nurturing stuff instead of like Vash and the plants keeping things alive, you know? So children sort of taking for granted what they have, growing into just being able to nurture things themselves. So I don't know, just a possible way that Maximum might go.
I also this interaction with Vash and Millie, or no, I did it again, Meryl. Meryl's the one I like more. I don't know why I'm getting the names wrong. Like, it is interesting kind of seeing them both just very determined to do whatever it is they're thinking of in the moment. Like, you know, Meryl is very determined, like, you're not in good condition, you can't leave, going so far as to, like, slap him in the face, but he's still, like, resolved, like... Well, that I think is where he decides to tell them the truth, because it's like, you know, it's clear that she's doing this because she cares. It's not like... You know, she's not just an innocent bystander really anymore. And yeah, you know, that's where Vash calls them by name for the first time. And, you know, that's kind of what convinces them, like, oh, he's also being very serious and honest and, like, not hiding anything.
Right, and
I'm definitely curious to see where, like, I hope that Meryl and Millie get more to do in Maximum, because, like, if they're sort of being a little more on equal terms now after this interaction, I'd just be curious to see how they interact and where that goes.
But yeah, after that, I was just gonna comment on because yeah, he goes out there. And now we see, god damn, the detail with and like the scars, like, Christ, why would you draw this again and again and again, Nightow? You're insane.
Yeah.
But he goes out and faces, you know, goes past the assassins, and like we see Legato, but then he just gets pushed down by knives, and it's like, oh fuck. And then yeah, we get the last conflict. But this is where like we kind of get like a huge cliffhanger, almost bad ending basically, because Knives reveals that Vash isn't completely human either. He turns his arm and is this the Trigun ? I do see like there's 3 angel faces on it, but there could easily be a 4th one. So I was just we were talking about that earlier with like, what does Trigun even mean? And,
right. There's also like Legato tries to tell everyone to kill Vash, but then Knives like just shoves him down and is like, you know, who said you could kill him? Like, I'll kill you. Which I guess is, you know, take the biggest threat in the manga so far and just job him out. Showed that this is the real deal.
Which I think is neat because, you know, even when the manga continues, I feel like just because of the way, like with Vash's fight, it's not about whether or not he can win. It's about whether or not he can maintain his ideals, right? So that's why, like you were talking about earlier with the other assassins, it's like, it's not about him overpowering them. Like, the fights can still be interesting because we know the conflict isn't about his strength necessarily, which is really, it's actually pretty unique, come to think of it. So,
and the way that, I kind of briefly mentioned it earlier, but the way that Knives kind of twists the knife on, like, Vash's ideals, like, you know, you're not trying to kill anybody, but if you keep track, you've hurt so many more people than, you know, so it's like, and then you compare that to, like, all the other destruction you've caused, it's, like, really just, it feels very, like, manipulative, like, taking Vash's positive traits and then, like, twisting them into a negative, like, no, you're not a good person, you're the reason this is all happening, he's a fucker.
Yeah, no, I laughed because this is the way you framed it, of like Knives twisting the knife, and it's like, did you do that on purpose?
No, I didn't.
Okay, well, that makes it funnier.
And then he also says, like, you know, shouldn't you point that thing somewhere else? Like, basically, like, you know, you're the problem, so why don't you kill yourself? Or just kind of give in and destroy everyone else.
Yeah, and the way, because, like, you know, he's able to, you know, it does get redirected and it shoots the moon instead, but, like, even when that's happening, there's the kind of mournful, like, oh, maybe we, humanity, were no good right from the start, and maybe, like, maybe Knives is right, and, you know, Vash fucking blows a hole in the moon, and everyone's fucking terrified of this devil, and, that everyone's gripped by this fear.
Yeah.
And then, boop, manga's over. Fuck you.
Yeah, what also kind of struck me in that sequence was just, like, you can see the tears, like, going down Vash's face as he's being manipulated to create this, like, you know, cause this destruction.
So there is, well, I was gonna ask a question, but, like, because there's I like because there's a couple bonus chapters, or there, because one was the original one shot, and which I don't have much to say about, because it's you know, we kind of get it. It's just establishing Vash as a character. But the other one was, like, sort of just like a day in the life of Vash, which was just like, this is the peaceful, like, at least, you know, this is just, yeah, it was just more of seeing him and just his daily, like, him trying to have a genuine smile but just enjoying his daily life, you know, and it's just, yeah. But I was gonna ask, so how does the anime, like, I know there's an anime original ending, but I guess I'm more curious about, like, how much of this do they adapt? How do they, like, do they actually do all this? Like, does all this happen, or was this new to you?
I definitely remember the like one shot chapter.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, what were you saying?
I was more about the end of this manga, the cliffhanger. Because they do the bonus chapters, but I was wondering, like, how do they adapt this final part of the manga with, like, knives and Vash, or do they not adapt it at all? Is what I was
No,
wondering.
they definitely adapt it. I remember
okay.
the giant gun arm. It's like, I don't want to say it's like maybe a little past the midpoint. Like, it's definitely a kind of like I guess it's the real low point in the anime. That it's just sort of like everything changes after that.
Okay, no, because I guess they do adapt some Maximum chapters, so it's not like there's nothing after this from the manga that they touch on. So okay, yeah, that makes sense, because it's a huge turning point, but it's also the end for us right now. So okay.
I like in this little bonus chapter, like, the training he does. Like, it looks like he's trying to, like, toss around this egg without, like, breaking it.
That was it. Yeah, no, he's still 150 years of hard work.
Yeah, I don't remember this one too much, but I'm pretty sure this is also in the anime. If like, what it seemed I stumbled. The Cynic Clinic video seemed to say that, like, there were some bonus chapters also adapted, and I think this would be one of them. But, like, the thing I really remember from the pilot chapter, that's the word I was looking for, was, like, the panel where all the guns are pointed at his face.
Yes, no, he even showed that in the video. He showed the manga and the anime version of it, so it's just very, very standout imagery, for sure.
I feel like this might even happen, like, before some of the initial, like the sand steamer thing, or the stuff with the, like, I think they might have had to reorder when because, like, I'm pretty sure they treat the sci-fi stuff as kind of more of a reveal, so I think the initial conflict with, like, the life on the planet might have been kind of reworked, but I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm definitely interested in one day checking it out. Because
bonus episode before we get to Maximum, we watch the anime.
I don't think.
No, I don't know. That's
it's
a commitment.
Yeah, but but I'm definitely interested in giving it a watch at some point. I think I definitely want to wait until after Maximum, because I kind of like the idea of my reading of the manga being quote unquote pure, in the sense of that, like, you know, even though I have some perspective on it through you and the Cynic Clinic video, I ultimately haven't watched it. So I'd I just like the idea of just me continuing to read the manga, only really knowing, experiencing the manga is cool. And then one day I will watch the anime. Like, for sure. I think that's guaranteed at this point, just because it's like, you know, and talking with it, I definitely appreciate it more. Because I told you, like, I was kind of rough going through it, but now it's like, oh no, there's definitely more good here that I wasn't seeing, and that clicked together during the discussion. This discussion went on for longer than I thought it was going to, honestly. Much longer.
I mean, I knew it wasn't going to be as long as the Ayakashi Triangle one, but I figured I'd have a good bit to say.
Yeah,
I'm also still kind of skimming through the pilot chapter, and it really establishes, like, you know, love and peace, which are, like, I feel like way more prominent, like a more prominent phrase in the anime.
Yeah, now that you mention it, like, because I did just remember, like, one of those images of anime is him doing the peace sign. So, you know,
the pilot just seems to really hit at the core of, like, what I think the anime represents really well in the early material.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's cool.
Nice. But anyway, so I guess that about covers it. So next time we're going to be reading chapters 1 through 47 of Trigun Maximum. And following that, we will be finishing Trigun Maximum. It's going to be another shorter series. So, yeah, awesome. And then after that, so I guess because I'll mention it again when we finish Trigun, but we want please update your page if you are a patron and you either want to change your pick or you want to give us or you haven't given one or you want to become a patron. We're coming up on the time you're going to want to do that, because after we read Trigun, we're definitely going to read Boruto and finish the original run of the manga, and then individually we're going to catch up to it. Dragon Ball Super is slightly more up in the air, because like a couple days ago I would have said, yeah, we're going to read Dragon Ball Super, but then the most recent chapter, 101, came out, and it seems to be continuing on because past the movie content with more superhero related content, because there was also some manga original stuff that happened before the movie content for Dragon Ball Superheroes. So we might have to wait on it and see just like what's the good cutoff point between like this arc and whatever the next arc is going to be. Are they going to flow into each other? And then I just have to pick, because even the last chapter of Super we read was literally just starting or getting to the Granola Survivor arc. So I just want to know when the best cutoff point will be, and I need to wait a couple, like hopefully by the time we finish Trigun, I'll know exactly when we can read Super. Like worst case scenario, we won't read Super until like later. But we're definitely reading Boruto because the original manga has been done for a while, and both of us want to catch up. So
darn, I was so excited to catch up on Dragon Ball Super.
And yeah, that's another one where it's like I feel like it's more of a might as well, especially because we did watch the movie, and so
like,
it's like
if there are gonna keep being movies released, like I'm committed to the Shounen movie like brainworm at this point, so right. I'll keep watching it. So I guess it would be nice to have context for surrounding events.
Yeah. So that's just and then we're gonna do I believe the 2000s block. We already have the two series in mind. Well, I'll wait on sharing them. Yeah. So that's it.
I want to re-look what my pick for the 2000s was in case I want to change it.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. But anyway, thank you. So yeah, 147 Trigun. Thank you. And we will see you next time. And you'll know if Mathwiz... Well, you won't know if Mathwiz changes her pick unless she decides to share. So...
oh, God. Right. Okay.
Now you remember what it was. Okay.
No, I have to keep it.
All right. Anyway, thank you, everybody. And we will see you next time.